Welcome to League of Women Voters Red Wing's Candidate Forum. My name is Deb English and I am a member of our League's leadership team. Thank you all for coming out in this weather. We'd like to give a special thanks to the candidates for District 5 Goodhue County Commissioner, Ed Moritz and Susan Betcher for being here, to the City of Red Wing who is videotaping tonight's forum, and to the library for providing the space. Before we hear from the candidates, we have some general information and guidelines to share with you. The League of Women Voters is a nonprofit organization focused on grassroots voter education. We encourage active and informed participation in government and do not endorse candidates for office or political parties. The opinions expressed tonight are those of the candidates and not those of the League of Women Voters. The forum this evening is being recorded for later viewing. The recordings will be available on the city's YouTube channel and on our League's webpage and our League's Facebook page. Our policy is to show the forum unedited in its entirety. At this time, I'd like to introduce our moderator for this evening's forums, Heidi Jones. Heidi is a Red Wing resident and a longtime League of Women Voters member and past president. For her work in a variety of roles in our community and internationally, including her long service as a Red Wing School Board member, she received the 2022 Amos Owen Award for Human Rights. Thank you, Heidi, for moderating the forum this evening.
Thank you, Deb, for that lovely introduction. And thank you, everyone, for coming out. It's a great honor to be here with you tonight. I'd like to especially welcome the candidates who are participating in one of the most basic parts of democracy, running for elected office. And now for a few ground rules. Questions for the candidates were collected anonymously online and by email, and then reviewed by an experienced League of Women Voters team. Each candidate will have 4 minutes to make an opening statement and 2 minutes to respond to each question I ask. Candidates will also have 2 minutes for a closing statement, and time is being kept by Randy Decker. A few comments. You will notice that I will not be using any titles tonight in order to avoid any bias towards incumbent candidates. I've gone over the format with each of the candidates, and I would also like to ask the observers to be respectful of the candidates and other observers and keep a civil and respectful tone tonight. In the case of an inappropriate disruption, there will be one warning. A second disruption could lead to a pause in the proceedings. Also, please do not applaud, speak, shout, or make other audible responses while candidates are speaking, or at any time during the forum. Any time that is spent in applause or other noise shortens the amount of time the candidates have to present you, the voters, with the information you need to make your choices. You will be invited to applaud at the end of the candidate closing statements. We have asked candidates to refrain from anything that may be considered a personal statement about another candidate. We expect candidates to speak truthfully. We reserve the right to allow a candidate to respond if these guidelines are not followed. So at this time, please join me in welcoming the candidates, and please hold your applause until we conclude. We will begin with Edward Moritz, opening statement, followed by Susan Betcher. And we will alternate again for the questions. So, Mr. Moritz, if you could come up and bring your name tag to put up here.
Thank you for coming out for our, what is it, 4th or 5th snow fall we've had this year. And I appreciate you being here, and I'm hoping that that I remember how to speak, because I'm not a public speaker. Like was said, my name is Ed Moritz. I'm running for CD5 Commissioner. I'm originally from South Dakota, and I moved out here 5 years ago, next month, to be with my family. which there in the back, my lovely fiancee Sierra, and 2 out of the 3 of my children, and there's one on the way in August. I ran in 2020 for the same office, and now for the same reasons: to bring common sense and hard work, and to provide results for the county and for the citizens. My belief is in limited government and local government doing its job within a budget and within its means. Every dollar that the government takes in taxes from the citizens, they lose in freedom and over that money and freedom in general. I've always had a passion to serve since high school. In government, I annoy my fiance with nothing but politics. And do I get a refund if I don't use all 4 minutes?
I don't think so.
Okay. And thank you. I look forward to your questions.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Sue Betcher. I want to thank the League for hosting this event and thank all of you for coming and for your interest in local government. For me, serving as County Commissioner is an unexpected journey. I retired in June of 2022, and I was thinking about meaningful and useful things that I could do to serve my community in retirement. As I was going through that thought process, I got a call from Commissioner Paul Drodos, who was seriously ill and needing time away. He asked me to serve in his place. Until that call, it had never crossed my mind. I asked Paul to give me a couple of days so I could learn about the duties and responsibilities of being a commissioner. I felt it was a good fit and the right time in my life to take on a new challenge. I agreed to do it. The county board unanimously appointed me to serve until a special election can be held. I'm now running to, I'm hoping to be honored with the opportunity to continue to serve the people of District 5. I've actually lived in District 5 my entire life. I grew up on Red Wing's East End and attended Quabbel School. My dad, Louie Nelson, was the first person in his family to graduate from high school, and my sisters and I were all first-generation college graduates. I graduated from St. Olaf College and the University of Minnesota Medical School and practiced psychiatry primarily in Hastings for 35 years. I believe that I have life experiences that qualify me for serving as a commissioner. As a physician, I was taught to evaluate complex problems and offer evidence-based effective solutions. I also was taught to stay calm and reasoned in the storms of my patients' lives. Finally, as the sole practitioner in Hastings, I learned to work with the broad section of that community. I believe my knowledge as a healthcare provider and my knowledge in mental health is a real asset in terms of working with Goodhue County Health and Human Services. I also had previous experience working on township government. I served 6 years on the Wacouta Township Board and was chair for 4 of those years. I successfully lobbied the state of Minnesota to put new improved turn lanes in at Highway 61 at Sevastopol and Wacouta roads. I negotiated a new fire contract with the city of Red Wing, and I established Wacouta Township ownership of the cemetery. Most importantly, I learned to listen to my constituents, where they were coming from and why, and share my point of view and the rationale for my conclusions. So what do I want to do as county commissioner? My biggest priority is to protect and enhance the safety, health, and well-being of the residents and our environment. I want to do this by using practical, evidence-based, effective solutions that will address the broad range of issues that come before the board. My view of taxes was very much influenced by being the daughter of a small business owner. I lived the stress of needing to make quarterly tax payments on top of unexpected household repairs. That helped me to understand the importance of keeping taxes low and performance high. Citizens need to know that their money is being spent wisely and that they're getting good value. As a county, we do need to do better with technology. Goodhue County is not fully utilizing the improved efficiencies, cost savings, and outcomes that come from effectively using technology. We also need to improve broadband access to the rural parts of the county. I'm committed to leaving the county better off than I found it. This includes making sure there's opportunities and access for all residents, especially those that historically lack that opportunity and access. I want to do my part to tend to this great county and see that the county thrives now and in the future. And I did make it in 4 minutes. That's why I was rushing a little bit.
All right, thank you, candidates, for your opening statements. Our first question this evening, and Sue will be answering first, and they will be sharing the microphone. So if you'll switch that on, and it's not as sensitive, it's more sensitive than this microphone. The first question, what experience do you have in community service, politics, or joint decision-making to offer as a county commissioner? And you'll have 2 minutes to answer questions.
I think the most important service that I have is my service on the Goodhue Township Board. I told you some of the things that I accomplished, but I didn't really tell you about what I learned. Prior to serving on that board, I didn't really understand what the rule of law meant. I kind of thought we could just go up there and do whatever we wanted, and learned pretty quickly that that wasn't the case. When you're in township government, you don't have any staff at all. So you don't have anybody that's figuring out your budget, figuring out how to get your roads plowed or your ditches mowed. And so as part of township government, I had to set the budget, I had to present that to the electors, I had to make sure we could live within our budget. I think the second part of that question was about collaboration. As a physician, what you're doing always is collaborating with the person you're working with to try to come up with a solution that is acceptable to them and effective for them. So I guess I think both of those things are helpful. Thank you.
For me, it would be when I was still out in South Dakota, I worked for the constitutional carry out there that was passed and signed by the Governor Kristi Noem, and meeting with individuals and groups and making sure that that can be passed. And I have volunteered in the past for elections and in party office in the leadership there, and I've always prided myself of working well with others that disagree with me to find solutions and a compromise so that we can move forward together for the betterment of whatever we were working towards. And that would be my answer to the question.
All right. You can hang on to that microphone because you'll be answering first on the next question, Ed, on infrastructure priorities. More federal and state funding for infrastructure projects will be available in the near future. What are your top 2 priorities for using infrastructure dollars in the county?
Well, for one, we need to do better with our roads. There are roads that in this county and the bridges that there was one, for instance, shut down because the maintenance hadn't been done in a few years on it. And there are some roads here in Red Wing and in outside of in the wider Goodhue County that need to be redone and done right. And for any infrastructure, that is the bedrock, is making sure we have good roads and making sure that like when it snows, that our plows are getting out there before and icing and sanding down so that there's not issues when the snow finally comes. Because we found out with the snowfall this year, the roads have been an issue for not only myself and others that I've talked to while door knocking and getting to know their priorities.
The two infrastructure priorities that come to my mind, first would be looking at the rural broadband and seeing if that would be covered. There's a lot of parts of Goodhue County that they really do not have good internet access. It's expensive to run cable in rural parts of the county, and if there's a way that we could do that with some extra money from infrastructure, I think that would be a good thing. Goodhue County has about 400 miles of road and I think over 100 bridges. Those bridges are inspected regularly, and there's a list of bridges that are on the watch list. The bridge that Ed was referring to in County 2 had been on that watch list for a while, and in a routine inspection they understood that water had been seeping through the bridge deck and it was causing some, I don't know if corrosion I guess is the right word, on the bridge deck. And so the talk now is for the county to look at some of those other bridges that they are watching and perhaps put some of those bridges further up the list of being fixed more quickly and to hold off some on the repaving of roads. But I would say broadband and the roads and bridges are the two most important infrastructure things.
Thank you. Question number 3 this evening, and we're starting with Sue to answer. Many are concerned about taxes. What would you propose to address the challenges of falling tax revenue and rising costs? What are your ideas to increase revenues and/or decrease expenditures?
The Goodhue County budget is about $84 million, and about half of that comes from local property taxes and about half of that comes from other sources. And so when we look at revenues from property taxes, that's not just your homes, but it's also our businesses. About 20% comes from XL Energy, so we need to protect that continues to be a countywide revenue source and not divided amongst the whole state. The best way, I think, to increase revenues is to increase growth. In the last 18 months, there were 300 new houses built in the county, and that means that those 300 houses were participating in the overall levy. And I think we need to increase business growth as well. So I think those two things. The county goes after grants that make sense. That can be a big source of revenue, particularly in health and human services. And we do charge fees for things like building inspections, marriage license, and we always have to take a look at whether or not those fees are consistent with actual costs. Cutting expenses is somewhat challenging. Most of what the county does is mandated by the state. And so the way in which we can save costs with those mandated responsibilities is by being more efficient. And I really think the key to being more efficient is going to be making better use of technology. I think that's especially true in the health and human services system. The assessor's office are also trying to make better use of technology. They're starting to use something called, I think it's called AirView, so they don't have to run out to every building to measure its height and its dimensions. They're also starting to use the MLS system in a different way, so they aren't spending so much time on the phones. There are non-mandated services we can look at, but I think most of those are services we value, like vet services, like drug court, like 4-H, and I'm not sure that anybody would want to cut back on those.
Would you repeat the question for me?
Sure. What would you propose to address the challenges of falling tax revenue and rising costs? And what are your ideas to increase revenues and/or decrease expenditures?
Well, for one, to increase costs, or not increase costs, but increase revenues, is the business climate here in Goodhue County. When I've talked to business owners, the main concern for them is there's no growth. There may be 300 new homes, but they're mostly unaffordable for families that would move in here and provide, and give business to those small businesses. And if the county need more government, they can, they continue to do what they do, is raise property taxes, which she said about, I think it was 40% come from property taxes for the budget.
It's about other sources.
Okay.
Property tax, a good share of that comes from businesses,
Okay.
but mostly Excel.
Okay, well, because I understand when I received the budget this year and for my proposed property tax increases, every year that I've lived here, it went up 8% on average. And I've owned a home here for close to 5 years now. And there's been no, every year it's gone up, like I said. And there's some in this community that, have to decide whether they're got to pay their property taxes, food, or medication that live on Social Security. So, they have to decide whether they, want to move, which is unfortunate. But and while families and households have been struggling during the pandemic and now with high inflation, I lost my train of thought. I apologize. And well, excuse me, I remember now. To decrease spending, like I said, during this few years, the last time the budget was raised is mostly to pay for increased salaries. And while people are struggling, I'm sorry.
Your time is up.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, thank you. Question number 4, Ed, you will have an opportunity to respond first. Many are concerned with increased gun violence in our communities. What can law enforcement do to help reverse this current trend and respond to the need for safer communities?
In 2020, when I did a ride-along with one of the deputies, getting the deputies what they need in the department would be a start. The gun violence that is increasing would be, it's unfortunate, and providing they're stressed to the max because when I was running in 2020, he said, I was told that there was no overtime for officers, so if they were off duty and there was not enough people, they went to the emergencies that were called in order, and there was it's like if you have one in south of the county, in southern part of the county, and you have an issue here in Red Wing, they had to wait until an officer was available, and which is unfortunate for the one that had to wait for the emergency, and he also said that he referred to his shotgun that he had in the police the patrol car, is that it was being held together by duct tape because there was some issue with getting it fixed. And that put me uneasy because if he needed to use that, it was dangerous to use. So updating the weaponry that they need to use to do their job, and also investing in body cameras that'll also protect them going forward.
I want to say that it's my understanding that the Sheriff's Department has the weaponry they need, and they have the training they need, and the number of people they need to respond to events in the county. I can't speak to the city, but I can speak to the county, and that's the Sheriff's report. And I think about how do we try to decrease crime generally, and I think there's things that drive crime. I think addiction drives crime, and to the extent that we can recognize addiction early and address addiction, I think that helps bring crime down. I think one of the things that we're doing now in Goodhue County is drug court, and that's an effort to try to help people with addiction issues who run afoul of the law to have the opportunity to get sober, build a stronger life, and to deal with their addiction. I also think that the county is working very hard to work on building strong families, and with building strong families, you start helping people before they get to the point that they're committing crimes. So I think that's important as well. The county sheriff meets with the county board regularly. And again, I want to conclude by saying we make sure that the county sheriff has what he needs to keep the county safe and that the weapons are working properly. Thank you.
Thank you, candidates. Question 5 this evening. Health and Human Services is a large department in county government providing essential services to our residents with economic assistance, public health, and social services divisions. This department faced extreme challenges during the COVID pandemic. How do you think they performed? How will you as a commissioner actively support and fund these vital services? And this question will begin answering with Sue Betcher.
I've learned quite a lot about health and human services. It turns out that 95% of the funding for health and human services in terms of the benefits people get doesn't come from the county, but it comes from the state and federal government. And what the county is really charged with doing is it's administering these funds. I think that the Health and Human Services would benefit more than anybody from improved technology. They operate with 7 different computer systems. They have to enter data into each one of those systems. Those systems don't talk to each other. And then if there's a change, like you move or have a baby or you're late on something, it needs to be re-entered into all those systems. I think our Health and Human Service does a fantastic job. I think they're very, very committed to what they do. And it's always a pleasure to work with them because of how seriously they take their responsibilities to try to help serve the people of this county.
I would like to reiterate, expound on those comments, because I think she's absolutely right. The county did a wonderful job in what they did, and I think letting them know that too, which I'm sure they do, and continue to provide the funding for them would be well, and like she said, communication with them is. I do apologize. I'm not a public speaker, and I'm sweating bullets up here. And working in conjunction with Mayo, I think, is an excellent thing. And I was talking to a voter Tuesday night, and she alluded to the fact that there's only one a psychiatrist, I think she said, that works here in Red Wing, and to finding more more psychiatrists that can work here in Red Wing instead of having one that's now on leave at the moment is what is my understanding, and just to continue the great work that they have been doing.
Thank you. Next question. How should the board set short and long-term goals? And what would your priorities be? And Ed, you get to answer first this time.
My first two would be the continuing of public safety and affordable housing. The housing units that are going up by Walmart, like I said earlier, unaffordable. $1,000 for for an efficiency is not affordable. And we talked about this in 2020, and I have yet to see anything being done about it by the county. I know they talked about it in one of their meetings, I think, but nothing. There's no results to it. And like we talked about earlier, the roads and bridges, and continuing to improve them as we go forward.
So it really is the job of a county commissioner to meet the short-term needs we have right now, but also to be looking at the long-term goals. And those two things need to integrate with each other. The short-term needs are protecting public safety right now, meeting health and human services right now, making sure the roads are plowed. And I think the county does well with that, but they also do a lot of long-term planning. They have a 25-year capital plan, figuring out when they're going to need snow plows, when they're going to need to replace a furnace. They have a 20-year housing study, which they look at what are the projected needs within the county over time. And they have a comprehensive plan looking at building and zoning and looking at the environment, looking at cultural things and kind of where do we want to go. I kind of lost my train of thought because I was thinking about housing. And as part of the comprehensive plan, the townships have made it clear that they want to protect agricultural land. So most of the development that occurs within Goodhue County is not occurring anywhere except for within the 10 municipalities. How the county helps in those situations is they help with the cost of the building permits, and sometimes they'll like totally eliminate the cost for affordable housing. And Health and Human Services will work with these projects to make sure that there's going to be people who in fact want to live in those buildings. So the county doesn't have a big role itself in building affordable housing because it's not being put up in the rural areas, but it's being put up within the city limits of the various municipalities. Where they have been involved is in some of the smaller communities where they're trying to put up workforce housing. Some of the small communities can't hire because there's no housing at all, and the county's been trying to help in those smaller towns. Thank you.
I'm going to skip our affordable housing question since I think it just got answered. That leads us to question 7 of the night. What is your understanding of systemic racism, and what is a county commissioner's role to address it? And Sue Betcher will start first on answering this question.
Well, I'm thinking about it in terms of that diversity, equity, and inclusion. And the county does have an equity committee, and that was one of the committees I was assigned to, primarily because I was assigned to Paul's committee, and that was one that he was on. And so what we're trying to do is look at that notion of everybody needing opportunity and access. And we're trying to look at what are the roadblocks for people having access, whether that's economic access, housing access, education access, healthcare access. And we're trying to look at what we can do to remove those roadblocks. And I think that the county is trying to be solution focused, meaning how do we solve that problem of access rather than trying to look at blame or shame about how we got here. And I think that that's important. So improving access and opportunity and removing barriers is kind of where I think we need to go.
We as a county, I don't think there is a problem with systemic racism until the politicians start talking about them, because the roadblocks and the opportunities are there for any person, like she said, and the inclusions for those opportunities for them to move forward, and with the I think the county is doing a good job with that, and to continue to do that. But like I said, the opportunities and inclusions are there, and racism is only talked about by the politicians.
I just want to clarify that I think there are roadblocks, and I think the county is trying to look at what they can do to remove some of those roadblocks.
The next question will be answered by Ed. And this is concerning relationship. So the city of Red Wing and the Prairie Island Indian community have been collaborating on a project called Honoring Dakota, or Metakuya Owasin, meaning we are all related. How would you assess the relationship of the Goodhue County Board of Commissioners with Prairie Island Indian community?
I think in order to do that is to continue the communication that we have and the Dakota language, is, if I remember correctly, is starting to be taught in the college. Is it here somewhere? But keeping the communication open, and I think the relationship is doing well, especially with the continuing with their franchise of the gambling, and working with their leaders to continue that.
I think Commissioner Linda Flanders has worked hard to develop a relationship with the Prairie Island Indian community, and I think she's been very successful with that. I was able to attend the event at Prairie Island on Saturday evening and hear from a lot of people from the tribe about what their experience had been growing up near Red Wing and their desire to heal the relationship with Red Wing. Several of the members of the tribe spoke about how damaged they were by how they were treated in this community, by this community where they were growing up. But they were also clear in stating, we don't blame anybody in this room for that happening. And we want to work with the Red Wing community to go from here and build a stronger relationship and heal together. And I was impressed with how gracious they were, and I was impressed by how many people from the county and how many people from the Red Wing community participated. And a fun thing for me is the tribal, I don't know if it's called president or chair, wondered if Wakuda Township would be willing to support a statue of Chief Wakuda. I don't know if I said that to you or not. And so now I have a little bit of a wager with Mayor Mike Wilson to see if Wakuda can get a statue of Chief Wakuda up faster than Red Wing can get one up of Chief Red Wing. And we'll see how it goes and who has to pay for a beer.
Thank you. As a county commissioner, what measures, if any, would you support to reinforce or ensure voter confidence in our elections? And Ms. Betcher starts.
I feel a little ill-prepared to answer this question. I know that the finance person, Brian Anderson, Ryan, is that right? Is very much involved in elections, and that they did an entire video showing the security of elections in Goodhue County and invited the public to come and be a part of both watching that video and seeing how elections are run here in Goodhue County. And I think they had the canvassing board, and again, open to the public, so anybody could see how it was happening and what was being done. And to my knowledge, they really want transparency. They don't want it to be some kind of secret procedure about how elections are done, and they're committed to seeing that they're being done correctly.
I think to start, one thing I'm not used to moving here from South Dakota is not showing an ID to vote. And as we are doing everything we can to protect our elections here in Goodhue County, and they must be doing a great job, because when I looked to see if my ballot was counted in 2020, it said it didn't exist. And I'm a faithful voter, and I know there's many layers of security once the vote is in and tallied and looked over to make sure there's no discrepancies. But I would say adding adding that very important element of showing an ID to vote would be a start to election security.
Okay. Our next question. County commissioners often deal with land use issues, feedlots, water runoff, silica sand mines. Many exemptions or waivers to our existing land use ordinances, codes, and statutes come before the county board. In what ways will you learn about these issues and prepare to vote on them? And Mr. Moore, go ahead.
Thank you. For one, I would meet, with all the persons involved, find out what the details are, finding out what's best for the environment and the surrounding community, and vote wisely on those issues as they arise, because I'm sure there's plenty of them that come before the board, and decisions would need to be made.
In Goodhue County, there's a lot of different committees and boards, and there's a planning and advisory committee. There's one board member on that committee, and I'm not sure how many citizens, I'm guessing 4 or 5, something like that. And when there's any kind of request that it doesn't fall within the standard land use, they review that. They hold a public hearing at which the landowner himself who wants to get the variance can speak, but they also hold a public hearing where anybody from the community, including surrounding neighbors, can come and speak. And on the Planning and Advisory Commission are experts in land use, people who know more than I do as a county commissioner, and they prepare a report and they prepare a recommendation, and it includes all the testimony of anybody who spoke at that public hearing. And then the county commissioner who was part of that board, as well as the person involved with land use, comes and makes a report to the county board. And then there's another public hearing at the county board level where either the person with the project or people who are opposed to the project can speak to the pros and the cons of moving forward. The commissioners can ask questions of anybody who's at that public hearing. They can look at the recommendation of the Planning Advisory Commission. They can look at the recommendation of land use, and they use all of that information to make a decision. And if there's some reason that they're still not certain, if there's some question that hasn't been addressed, they can send that back to the Planning and Advisory Commission to have them look at that specific issue, and then it would come back to the board again. So it's a pretty thorough process where the public's involved and the person who wants to do the project is involved, and land use is involved in to the extent of telling us what the ordinance says and is this consistent with the ordinance and the comprehensive plan.
Thank you both. If elected, how will you communicate with county residents? And Sue, you begin.
I like communicating with people. As a psychiatrist, I was trained to communicate with people, and I think I'm pretty good at it. As far as being a county commissioner, all of our phone numbers, all of our emails are listed on the county's webpage. And I've gotten emails from some of you about questions about things that the county board is doing, and I get phone calls from some of you. If I know the answer, I'll address that myself right away. If I don't know the answer, I'll try to go to the person who works within the county that can provide information to me. And then we decide if I'm the best person to get back to that person, or if the expert in land use or the attorney or whoever that is should get back to that person. But I consider myself to be pretty approachable, and I like getting questions because I learn things from the people asking the questions.
And I agree with Sue on that. She, being open and willing to talk to anyone, myself, regardless of, even if you're not in, CD5, I take a phone call, letter, email, anything, because if you've got an issue, it's my issue, and trying to solve it is is my first priority. And I'd have, you know, coffee with any resident that wants to sit down and talk about what's going on the board, and see how I can get results for them or anyone that comes to me.
We are quickly going through our bank of questions. We have a little under 15 minutes left. Our next question: as a county that borders the Mississippi, we face the challenges of both flooding and low water levels. How can we build resiliency at the county level to address these issues? And we begin with Ed.
That's a tough question for me. I am not up on my environmental standards or the Mississippi River, but protecting and maintaining from the flooding would be a top priority, especially with all the snowfall and it could rise at any time. But yeah, having a plan and process would be one of the first priorities, and seeing what we can do to protect the environment and the ecosystem around there.
Well, I grew up part of my life on the floodplain on the Mississippi River, so I've had floods in my bedroom before. I know quite a bit about flooding on the Mississippi River. I don't know that the county itself has much ability to impact what the water level is on the Mississippi River. A lot of that has to do with climate that we don't control, and a lot of that has to do with the Corps of Engineers and where they're deciding to hold water back and where they're not deciding to hold water back. But there's a couple of things exciting about the river. I don't know if you've noticed that we've now been declared I think it's a national port, one of 30, and the amount of goods that goes up and down the river is about the same as the Port of Miami, and that was just the upper Mississippi River. So I thought that was exciting. And I guess I'm going to answer the question by saying that I think more the county needs to look at how climate change is going to affect the county. And I think the two areas where it's going to affect it most prominently, one is the Mississippi River, and an awful lot of goods and services flow up and down that river, so it is important. But the other is that climate change is going to affect our farmers and what crops grow, what kind of growing season they need, the drought and the deluges. And I think that it's going to be important for we as a county to learn about that so we can pass good information on to farmers so they can make decisions that are going to work for them economically and for us as a nation for our food supply.
Our next question is: transportation in the county is a problem for those who do not have access to a car or do not drive. How can the board address this? And we begin with Sue.
You know, when I was first thinking about transportation in the county, all I was thinking about was roads and bridges, and almost no one who I talked to asked me about roads and bridges. Everybody I talked to asked me about the Hiawatha Land Transit, and that's because the people who live in Jordan Towers and the people who live at the plaza depend pretty heavily on that. Right now, there's 3 routes that run. They run 6 days out of the week, and they run every hour on the hour, which seems pretty good to me, but for a lot of people it's hard for them to get to work on time and to get home on time. They do also offer a dial-a-ride service, and what I'm not sure of is how accessible that dial-a-ride service really is. For a period of time, the Three Rivers Hiawatha Transit was short of drivers, and when they were short of drivers, all that was operating was the dial-a-ride, and that was a big problem. I'm going to kind of switch gears from that altogether. One of the things I learned at the plaza is that there aren't nearly as many volunteers with Faith in Action that are drivers. I learned from Gary Yacco that the care clinic had 300 volunteers before COVID, and now they have 30. And I think one of the things that we need to do as a community, not just the county government, the county, the city, the United Way, is we need to have a big drive to get people back into volunteering, so we have folks who can drive people to doctor's appointments, and so we have people up at the care clinic. And I know that was a little bit off topic, but I think we do need to get all hands on deck, including volunteers.
I personally did not have any knowledge of Hiawatha until I started looking at it here recently, and increasing the routes with finding drivers, and I was excited to hear that they were training at least one new driver, to open up routes and to help get our citizens around the county and get them where they need to go. And maybe the county government can help out with that by wanting to bring in more new residents, and figure out how we can working with the businesses and how to pay them at least a living wage, working towards that, so that they don't have any issues in the future.
The 2020 census led to Goodhue County redistricting before the 2022 elections. And the Goodhue County Board did not change the borders of District 5, although it has the lowest population in the county. How will you balance the interests of all Goodhue County residents with the interests of Red Wing residents, who are the bulk of your constituents? And we begin with Ed.
I would say listening and working with them and finding out their concerns and how they can be achieved of getting results for the entire county. And I would tell you, I was very happy that Goodhue County was moved to the 1st district, since we have more in common with the 1st district than the 2nd, and the working with the rest of the county, I think we can balance the needs of the 5th district well with the other 4.
There's 5 county districts. 2 of them are primarily Red Wing, but each of the Red Wing commissioners has 1 township. I have Wakuta Township and Linda has Welch Township. But the other 3 are all rural commissioners. And so we have to pay a lot of attention to what is needed in rural Goodhue County, because there's really 3 rural votes and 2 city votes. And so it's probably a little bit more the opposite. How do we get the 3 rural commissioners to pay attention to what's actually needed in the city of Red Wing? But I will say that the 5 commissioners who are currently on the board, nobody's coming in there with an agenda. Everybody's coming in there wanting to solve the problems of the county, and I haven't once heard that they don't want to deal with that problem because it's not in their district. I think it's kind of, we're all in this together, and for any of us to thrive, the entire county needs to thrive, and that's what the goal of the county commissioners is.
All right, thank you. We are at our final question, and then we will end with closing remarks by each candidate. Will you support the purchase or use of electric vehicles by the county?
My first.
Yes, you are.
The county currently has 2 hybrid vehicles on order. I think they're hybrid RAV4s, and they would like to buy some electric vehicles, but most of the county trips that the pool vehicles are used for are those that are going longer distances, and I think they feel like they want to hold off a year or 2 until there's more charging stations and until people are more comfortable with that. But I am going to say something that has nothing to do with anything you asked. The biggest issue in Goodhue County is that everybody's having trouble finding employees. The county's having trouble with employees, the post office is having trouble with employees, the restaurants are having trouble with employees. And the biggest issue we really have is how are we going to attract people to work at the county, to work in Goodhue County, and to keep our economy going. And we really, as a county board, that's our biggest initiative of the year this year. And we're working with Southeast Technical College, we're working with the high schools, we're revamping the website, so our website's a little snazzier and younger people don't think we look so old-fashioned. And when those young people start coming in, they'll want electric vehicles, and then we'll get more comfortable with that too.
Yes, I would support electric vehicles. So I don't know how to follow up after that. I would support the use of electric vehicles in Goodhue County. You know, the two that are on order, we'll see how they work out, and if they do, you know, I would support moving forward with you know, with a handful.
All right, we are at the moment where you can do closing statements. If you want to come back up here to the podium and bring your name tag. And Sue, you're going to close first, and then followed by Ed.
This is less than 2 minutes, so I don't have to be in such a hurry. I want to thank the League for hosting this event tonight and for giving the voters a chance to ask their questions, to learn about the skills, the experiences, the qualifications, and the goals of the candidates. I want to thank all of you for coming and participating in our democracy. It really is important that people participate. That's how we keep a good democracy. And I want to thank the City of Red Wing for recording this forum to make it available to a wider audience. I hope that you've been able to learn something about me, about my qualifications, my approach to serving as a county commissioner, and my commitment to working with the community to move Goodhue County into the future. For me, Goodhue County has been a wonderful place to grow up, to get an education, to work, to raise my family, and now retire. It's been home to my family for generations, and I want to do everything I can to tend to this great county, to see that Goodhue County thrives and offers opportunities to all residents now and in the future. I also want to remind you there is an election on Valentine's Day, that early voting has already begun. It might be a good idea to vote early given the snowstorms. I want to close by asking you for your support and asking you for your vote. Thank you for coming, and thank you for listening.
I'm probably going to forget that too.
That's what I'm here for.
We appreciate it, and thank you for. Can you hear me? Thank you for participating here in this event, and for the League of Women Voters putting this on, like they do for every election. My apologies for not having all the answers tonight, since I am not a sitting commissioner, and but if I can earn your vote for, like Sue said, on February 14th, I will always do my best to serve you. My eagerness to learn and listen to the citizens to achieve results for the county, because I know this is the only place that I would want to raise my family, and I hope that more in the future will do also. Thank you, and please don't forget to vote, since Goodhue County saw an increase in voter turnout in 2022, and I'm hoping to see that for this special election and be one of the best for turnout. Thank you.
So this concludes this portion of the evening. Thank you to the candidates for participating tonight. As a former candidate, I'm very aware of the courage and commitment it takes to throw your hat in the ring. I'd like to invite Deb up to the microphone for a few closing remarks.
All right, last little bit, and here we go. Better put my readers on so I can actually see what I'm reading here. Thank you, Heidi, for leading our forum this evening. Thank you again to the candidates for participating in the forum. The candidates can also answer individual questions in a few minutes at the tables in the back, and I've been told that that is the back. We hope all of you leave this evening as a more informed voter. The special election is Tuesday, February 14th, as we've all noted up here. Early voting is available and highly suggested with all of this snow. The best source to find your polling place for election day or ways to vote early is the Goodhue County website. One of our league members can assist you this evening. Over there. For more than 100 years, the League of Women Voters has been a trusted source for nonpartisan voter registration and education, and a long-standing witness to Minnesota's proud tradition of voter access and election integrity. We invite you to the Minnesota League of Women Voter website, LWVMN.org, to learn about the statutes. Best practices and safeguards associated with Minnesota elections can be found on our Elections 411 page. Good evening, and please arrive home safely. Thank you.